go. There we go. Oh my goodness.
It's showing up now and everything.
Oh my
This is why.
goodness. This
This is
is.
why. Yeah.
So I did a test run. I promise you, I did a test run. I don't know why I had so much trouble this time. I did a test run a week ago, got everything working fine, and I was like, okay, this is fine. And then I had all this trouble. So, anyway, hi, I'm Holy Spackle, and Tyler Durnan's on my face here apparently, so we can fix that in a bit. But
Hear
that
that?
sound that
So
sounded
you're
really
not
bad.
Tyler Durden. Okay.
That sounded so bad.
If you were Tyler Durden, I'd be shocked.
I know, right? Truth's out. I'm really a Satanist. No, just kidding.
New followers, Tyler Durden.
Yeah, new follower. It lists it and blings it.
Ooh.
So we were having some technical difficulties. I'm still having technical difficulties as I'm in a mini tiny little screen right now, and whatever. But we're gonna get it started. I'm Holy Spackle, and I'll be hosting a discussion about private schools, Christian private schools, and then also homeschooling, private homeschooling as well. And so with us on the panel, I have Sinister Porpoise in her lovely hat, and I have on the left-hand side, we have a Headless Chicken. Headless Chicken is Canadian and has had some experience in private school. And then also Exiled has had some experience in private school as well. So, yes. So we will begin our discussion, I guess.
Before we do... Sorry.
Before we do what?
Before we do that, I think I see your problem with your camera in Streamlabs.
Mm-hmm.
Resize your window.
Yeah, I was trying to... So what's weird is it's not just Streamlabs that it's wonky. It's actually through Discord itself that's wonky.
All right.
So I have to figure out why that is the case. But anyway. So, that being said...
Nice background. It looks like you're standing in the middle of the road about to hit any moment. Like if a truck comes by or something.
That's how I live my
You
life.
have to be able to duck.
That's right. That's what I do. I just
Hi,
lay on the
David.
road. So anyway, Exiled, you went to a private school?
Well, I did, and I wish there was somebody here who was a little bit younger than me, because this would have been back in the mid-70s, right? But yeah, I went to an accelerated Christian education school for 2 years. They pulled me out of public school, and so I was in the Christian school in 9th and 10th grade, excuse me, 9th and 10th, which was a nightmare and a disaster, really. It was a ACE school, Accelerated Christian Education. And then it was back when it first started up too. So I mean, any kinks that they've worked out between the early 70s and now, that's wonderful. But back then it was just terrible.
And I was homeschooled, gosh, as a kid in the 80s, and before it was legal in my state, and and then through high school. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was not legal in California for a while. And then Sinister Porpoise, private education? No?
Nope, that's why we thought it was weird.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't even ask.
Okay. Well, I asked in general, and then
Oh.
you chimed up, so I thought, oh, okay. Never mind.
Okay.
I wasn't paying attention to where I was. Discord.
All right, moving right along. Headless, did you go to private school, or were you a homeschooler?
I went to a private high school.
Okay. Catholic or Protestant?
Neither.
Oh, and neither? Oh, we're gonna have to talk about that. Was it like a charter school?
Nope. I don't think we do charter schools in Canada.
Oh, okay. All right. So I was homeschooled, and I was homeschooled as a creationist. I was presented with a very slight overview of what evolution was. Had no clue really how it was. Was told that it was completely, absolutely ridiculous. I would begin all my studying for homeschool with Bible study for like an hour before I'd actually do my schoolwork. And yeah, I excelled definitely with English and reading skills, and I was horrible with mathematics, like awful. I still am, and had a ghastly trouble with that. So I was having some trouble with all that kind of stuff.
All right.
All right, what?
Yeah, math
Just a
was always the
question.
problem.
Mm-hmm. What's up?
All right. I didn't go to I went to public schools, but I am an ex-Mormon for those who don't know. And the Mormons do something they call seminary as a teenager, where you basically go before and after school to study the Mormon scriptures. Was that part of the curriculum for that school, or?
I was not a Mormon, but it was part of my routine to go through in-depth Bible study.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah, heavy indoctrination in the Christianity or their version of it. But yeah, I think you qualify for this being a Mormon. What say it again? What it was that you went through? Sinister Porpoise? It was
I
called what?
didn't. Oddly enough, I didn't, mostly because it's a weird thing in the dynamic where I grew up, where most of the people in the ward, because Mormons love money, were upper class, and I lived in an industrial town, and the seminary programs were in the other town. But it was called seminary, where you just go in and study all 4 books of Mormon scripture. It's basically to enforce their indoctrination.
Yeah, as a teenager then, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, there was for me it was twice on Sundays, church, Wednesday church. Friday, Saturday, always had something at the church. Saturdays was usually, in the summertime at least, what they called soul winning, where you go out house to house and knock on doors.
You used to do soul winning?
Yeah, I did. I actually brought a beautiful family into the church. I had a deaf child in the family, and the church had deaf translations, deaf ministry. So I got them in. I feel terrible about it. That was my
You
one
feel
blessing.
terrible about it. Well,
I do. I do not like the church that I grew up in. Let's put it that way.
were they on the charismatic end of things, if I remember
Yeah,
right?
they were fundamentalist Baptist church. So we were, we're not Southern Baptists. We were Northerners, East Coast Northern. But yeah. Yep.
Ooh, you should have gotten.
What?
I just had a question. I'm trying not to interrupt.
That's
Were
okay.
you the independent fundamental Baptist variety, like my former co-host on Dwindling in Disbelief was?
Like Matt Bell? I mean, not Bell.
Yeah.
Matt Powell, the other horrible Matt.
Like
Yes.
Kent Hillman.
Yes, each cult leader could do whatever he wanted. Yes. But independent fundamentalist Baptist church, exactly. I don't know what independent means, but the independent part of that, but that's actually part of the that church's
If it says independent, it means
title.
that there's no district above them. So like most churches are formatted in a way where there's like a head of the church that oversees all the other small churches, and they follow that doctrine, and so it's kind of predictable. But when it's an independent Baptist church, how they run it is completely it's completely reliant upon that pastor and that board to make a decision on what they believe.
Yeah.
So
there we go. There's that pastor. That pastor was kind of psycho. I did figure that out eventually as a kid. Then I was about 16. So, yeah.
yeah, because like there's no one there to oversee them.
Before church, before I figured it out. Pardon?
I'm pretty sure there's a difference between the IFB and the NIFB, though, because there was some scandal a couple years back that had to do with some sort of sex abuse.
Yeah, we had that. Yep. But
And
I don't know what you're talking about. Is that the organization that oversees all these churches?
I don't know, but the NIFB split from the IFB over some sex abuse scandal, which is one reason why they're even more homophobic and transphobic than the IFB.
Yeah. What was really interesting is we had a youth pastor, so talk about sex scandals, if you don't mind. Is that okay, Holy Spackle?
Yeah, we can fluctuate a little
Okay.
bit and kind of go back.
There was a sex scandal in our church when I was of the same age. The girls were maybe a year older than me. Okay. The pastor of the church and one of the men who was one of the church bus drivers, for the bus ministry, where they would go around and pick up kids, take them to church every Sunday. They got with two girls. They were both married men, and they got with two of the girls, and one of them got pregnant. So the thing that they preached about so much, which was anti-abortion, they end up helping the girl get an abortion. So the youth pastor, who I adored, I just was so crazy about him, instead of doing anything to him, instead of reporting him to the police, they just moved him to a different church, just like the Catholic Church was doing for a while. So yeah, that happened. Big scandal. Thank God I wasn't involved in that.
That is crazy. And so, like, that
But,
guy, like, was he a young youth pastor? Not that that's, like, a whole lot better, but, like...
oh no,
would-
no, he would have had to have been, well, I know he was at least in his mid-30s. He had a wife and two little babies, two little kids at the time. So yeah, these were men that were definitely in their mid to late 30s, and we would have been like 15, 16, 17.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I had a really good youth pastor. Actually, I can't complain about that. The flavor of Christianity that though we were in was that of kind of like Matt Slick. It was like pretty conservative, and it wouldn't be like independent Baptist that wacky, but still really strict and conservative. Calvinist, kind of heady and less charismatic, and uh, the strictness of it. I mean, on LGBT issues, like it's completely off the table. Like it isn't so bad as like Steven Anderson, where Steven Anderson's like, you know, the government should kill the gays. He says these awful things like that. It's not like that, but it was like, this is a mental illness, and you should go to a counselor and get healed of this mental illness. And that was generally the attitude. Yeah.
Yeah, same here. Same here. They would literally launch into mocking sessions of gays and lesbians during church, and it was
Green
just really
church? Like, holy crap.
yeah. Oh, no. Hold on. Let me understand.
What?
The guy would do things like he would stop in the middle of church and start yelling at us. Like if we weren't paying strict attention, like there were like 3 or 4 of us kids and talking to each other or laughing or something. He would stop, make us stand up, and he would launch into a tirade against us. Yeah, and then we'd all be in trouble with our parents. Stuff like that. He would just stop and do these horrible things. I mean, the guy was nuts.
Wow.
You know, I don't know why it was really hard seeing my mother being such a devotee of this man. He was crazy.
Bringing up conversion.
Yeah.
Just bringing up conversion therapy as a side topic.
Mm.
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints does have a conversion therapy organization that they deny being connected to, called North Star.
It's like Exodus for that, which failed, by the way, but Exodus Ministries was the Protestant version.
Well, the interesting thing about that name is North Star is a gay Marvel character from the X-Men.
I'm pretty sure it was unintentional. They had no idea.
Oh my God, really?
It just amuses me. Continue.
Which came first, though?
The Marvel character, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay.
Maybe there's some sad irony there that they just
Yeah.
never didn't realize that. So, with the Mormon Church, was that ever like was your school at all associated with that, or were you in a public school?
I grew up in Pennsylvania. There weren't Mormon schools in Pennsylvania. There were
You,
Mennonite schools. I know some Mormons who went to them, but
you got to go to Utah and Arizona for that.
yeah. And Idaho.
Idaho. Funny you mentioned that. So in my case, when someone goes like, "How was your homeschool experience?" Would you, advise somebody to homeschool their kids or not? I'd say a couple things, and in my case, I found out that I have something called dyscalculia, however you say it, which is a kind of a learning disability. It's not like it's an intelligence thing. Like you could take an IQ test, and I scored decently on an IQ test, so I'm not like impossible to learn something, but it's difficulty with ordering numbers. So like I would lack the technique to cope with this. And I used to just be so down on myself, going, why can't I learn out of a book like my brother and sister can and succeed? And I'm so different. And sometimes I wonder if I had been tested in like a regular school where they're testing for these things, would I have been caught early, maybe, so that I could actually help, with that issue. And it wasn't until I went to community college where a community college professor went, "Oh, you're fun," and started going through and trying to figure out what was up with me. And then they had me tested, and they said, "Yeah, you have a actual problem."
Nice.
Because she's like, "Oh, you're right," and you get certain concepts, but you're like Swiss cheese. So you're reversing things. You're having difficulty showing your work, and I found out that like this is a thing for some people. Like it's like kind of the equivalent of having dyslexia with numbers. So it was interesting. It also translates to reading music. I would always have trouble reading music, no matter what. I used to be in choir for years and stuff like that. Still struggle with reading music. I play the guitar. I can play tab okay, but actually reading the stanzas and stuff like that, it's extremely hard for me.
Yeah. I
So
never got that either. I have no idea if I have any learning disorders, but I could not get through math back then at all, especially once we got to fractions. Fractions were impossible for me to get through. But my math was the subject that suffered the most in all of this. I've never had algebra.
oh, you never had to take algebra? Wow.
Mm-mm. Never had it.
Just a
Because I
question.
mean, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. I just had a question. Now, I went to school back in the 80s, and they didn't do a lot of testing for different things then either. Like, I didn't know I was on the autism spectrum until well into my adulthood. Was it a matter of they just didn't test for it, or was it a matter of timing as well? Because our understanding has shifted.
I'd never heard of autism back in the days I was in school, in high school.
That is
Never
possible
heard of it.
too, because like again, I grew up in the 80s, but by the 90s, by the time I was in high school, they would have caught something probably by then. Because I would have friends in high school that would also have similar problems, and they were doing well, but yeah, I don't know. They were allowed like extra time and tests, things like that. But I think for me, there were just weird little tricks that I learned to do that I just no one had ever thought of presenting to me. So like one would be like using graph paper and grid paper on everything that you do, like all homework and stuff like that. That's has to do with, and that was just enough for me to help in many ways, right? But with autism, I would definitely say like that was something that I don't think, because because I used to go to a very large church youth group. We had 300 high schoolers in our church youth group. Like, we were a huge church. Um, and I don't think we had anybody that was like, oh, that guy's autistic. Like, like we had somebody
Right?
that
No.
behaved differently, but we wouldn't. Nobody knew the term autism or said it.
Yeah.
And I graduated '97, so I don't think there was.
I don't know how the history of autism came up, like the history of us learning about how to deal with it and how to help teach people with autism.
The definition expanded in the DSM-5. It used to be Asperger's syndrome, but it's one of the things that makes me good with computers, so it's not all bad. Just makes me bad with people generally.
It's weird because you seem to get along fine with us, mostly.
The sarcasm, maybe. Do you have a hard time with sarcasm?
Yeah. Do you have trouble with sarcasm, Sinister Porpoise?
Sometimes jokes will go over my head, but every
Like
person...
I was being sarcastic just now. You recognize that, though, right?
Yeah,
Or
every person... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying, like you can understand that, because I should be careful of that with some people. I realize that. Somebody was asking me a question on Twitter, challenging something I'd written that was sarcastic, and I was like, "Do you really not understand sarcasm?" And they replied back to me, "I really actually don't." And I was like,
"Oh, ouch!" You're like,
okay,
"Oops."
I get you. Yeah, I said, okay. And then I explained it, and then this person watched my videos, and she got back to me. She was really
So the next time
a
you're
cool person.
sarcastic, Exile,
Yeah.
the next time you're sarcastic, you have to hold up the little sign.
Yeah, I know. I need to start
Types
using
in
that sign.
sarcasm.
Yeah.
Yeah, /C, right? /S, yeah.
I was gonna say, you've seen my streams; they're full of sarcasm.
Yeah, so you get sarcasm.
Yeah, that's why I was asking you. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, it's a spectrum.
It's a spectrum. It affects different people differently. Like, I will not always pick up on social cues.
Yeah.
And like when I was doing the help desk job, I had a time de-escalating. Actually, Headless Chicklin, what type of school did you go to? Because I know I'm curious.
It was a private high school, and it was a Mennonite high school.
All right, we need to talk about this. Mennonite? What happened in the Mennonite high school?
Oh, all right. It's not the horse and buggy Mennonites you're thinking of. It's like everybody else, okay?
So, wait, what do modern Mennonites believe?
Depends on the Mennonites.
Yeah, it depends on them too, yeah.
So you were allowed to wear buttons and stuff?
Yes. Actually, it was interesting. I actually wore a belt, and no one else really did.
Buttons.
I was not a part of that whole church thing.
Did you go on a Rumspringa?
No, that's Amish. I went there because I have learning difficulty, and they had smaller classroom sizes.
Okay.
That's why I went there.
Did it help?
Some, because smaller classroom sizes, you got more attention with the teacher, or more time with the teacher, kind of thing. But in some ways, yes. In some ways, no.
What were the negatives?
The negatives, well, mine more it happened to do with we had a very bad history teacher. So things never really got finished in that class.
So with a bad history teacher, I mean, like, are we talking about like really weird alternative history, whitewashed history, like just we can't get through the lesson history?
Yeah, the course that we were doing, the grade that we were at, we had to get up to at least the French Revolution by the time we were done, and we didn't quite get there. Like, there was just time wasted in the classroom.
Oh, I had a history teacher like that. Yeah. It was really easy to get him off topic. Was that the issue?
Oh, no, he was just lazy.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Like, I can remember having tests that were all multiple choice, and we had one question there where it did not matter which one you chose. You could argue that you were correct.
Now, oh my
Because
gosh.
the way
Like,
the
there was
question was
another
worded,
option to argue?
the way the question was worded, and then the four items you had to choose from, which was correct, you could argue, because it was which one doesn't belong, that of the four, everything could be excluded from the other three at least once.
Mhm.
So he could not mark the question wrong.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like the Security Plus exam.
Like I said, he was just lazy.
Wow.
Except in the Security Plus exam, there is only a certain number of answers that are right, and they're just wording it to trick you.
So, did you ever have learning packets? Like, a lot of homeschoolers have learning packets that they go through, like modules.
You were the first person I ever heard of a learning packet from.
What about you,
I've heard
Exile?
them.
Did you have learning packets?
Every day packets. That's what they were called.
I feel like you were a glorified homeschool.
Yeah, well, it was under the church. It was in the basement of the church, this school. So the desks were like, if you look up accelerated Christian education now, you can see a lot of pictures, and you can see how they set up the classrooms. And it's basically your desk sits facing the wall with dividers, so you're totally isolated from the other kids, right?
How many people were like in your class? And were you like, I mean, you probably had a span of grades, right?
Yeah, we did. We had a span of grades, but it doesn't matter because everybody's working at their own pace, PACE, right? Um, Accelerated Christian School, an ACE school. We had
Did you take mission trips to
ACEs.
Bermuda in the middle of February in Pennsylvania?
I wish. No, we went outside once a day or something like that, once out at lunchtime. That was it.
That was just
Oh my gosh. So you guys had little desks, kind of like at the library, right, with the little screens, right?
Yeah, you have and you have dividers, and then you basically like we'd have a cork board in front of us where we could put up our goals for the day. It would be a paper card, how many packets you were going to complete, or how many pages of the packets. We could choose how many we wanted to do. I could just do one page a day if I wanted. Um, and if you meet your goals, you get all these stars, and these are how you're these. Oh God, it was so stupid. um, and then so you'd have different, you'd have your like history, math, science, whatever, English packets. And so you do a certain number of pages, however many you chose to do when you first got in. And then when you were done, you would go up to a table in the middle of the room and you would score. Well, you'd have to get permission first. So you put your flag up, get the teacher, it wasn't really a teacher, the monitor, to tell you it was okay to go up to the table, and you'd score yourself at the table. So they'd have these little tests at the end of each, chapter or whatever.
Couldn't you cheat?
No, you didn't have to. It was so easy. At least for me, it was. It was boring and easy. Yeah. So when they evaluated me for math, I was already behind in math. So I mean, I just have simple stuff that I could do. It was just so easy. It was just like mundane shit, really.
How did they stop people from cheating?
Well, it's really impossible to cheat. You're sitting at your desk, you read the packet, then you take a test, then you go up and you
Yeah, but then when you score yourself.
oh, I can't remember how they would do that. I mean, like,
I mean,
yeah,
can't you just score yourself like, awesome, great job? Like,
no, you wouldn't be able to do that because you'd already have like the paper that you had taken the test on at your desk. And then when you walk up, you wouldn't have a pencil or anything, so you couldn't change any of the answers. Yeah. I guess that was how I don't remember any cheating being required That's the thing. I'm
But
trying to
what not
remember.
required is just people would like. Okay, let's this way. What if you're flunking the test, right? And you go over and you put your little flag up, and the teacher's like, "Yeah, go ahead," and then you're just like,
I think you just do it over. I honestly think that's all it was a matter of.
just shift
It
that
was
bubble
just so
over.
yeah, I think it was just pretty easy to do. Or you wouldn't get your goal met for that day, yeah?
But
Which would give you a sad face. You'd be like, boo, I didn't meet all my goals. Yeah, it was sad, mindless. That's how I remember it. Super easy.
it seems to be a system that's rife for abuse. Let's just say it that way.
Mm. It's indoctrination. The way I've always seen it is it's just basically a school to indoctrinate you against certain parts of education, like evolution, especially evolution, and culture, civics. None of that was taught.
Well, not civics at all. At least I had civics. I did have civics.
No, never had it.
I had a very whitewashed history. I would say that, but I don't know if that was necessarily my curriculum or also the sign of the times in the 80s. I don't know, but
No, history is generally whitewashed. It's not. You might have a worse version of it than I did, but it's generally whitewashed.
I'm pretty sure my version was like the 1950s version.
Do you remember a book called Pilgrim's Progress? Because I remember that.
Yeah,
was
I had to read
that
that
was a
for
reading.
school. I had to read Pilgrim's Progress. Yes.
that was it. There was no other reading that I can remember.
It's
In
terrible.
those 2 years. Yeah.
I've had to read
Liz,
other
did you have to
things.
read The Martyr's Mirror?
Never heard of it.
It's a Mennonite book. Just
Can't
wondering.
even-
It's
I can't
Sorry,
even
go ahead.
remember what Pilgrim's Progress was about.
It's
It was
about
like, what was it? What
it's
was the whole-
about gosh, what's the main character's name? Faith? Something like that?
Faith Open Charity or
Or
something.
maybe Faith was his sidekick that got killed. I can't
Let me
remember.
look it up.
I can't remember the main thing, but it's all about like him journeying through his hardships, and everybody he runs across, their name is like their main attribute. So like if you were prudent, you'd be Prudence or Prudent. If you were faithful, you'd be Faithful. If you were, I mean, what I don't know. There were negative attributes too. I can't think of them right now because it's been so long, but I'm pretty sure John Bunyan wrote it, I want to
Yeah,
say.
it was written.
And he was written in prison.
1678. Christian
Yeah.
allegory,
Yeah.
regarded as one of the most significant works of religious theological fiction in English literature. So that was our English lit.
So you didn't get to read the Canterbury Tales?
Didn't get to read any of that. No.
We didn't either, but
They pretty much wanted to keep us apart from everything going on in the world: music, art, history, science, especially.
So I got to
science.
like read the classics. So like any of the classic books that you like see, whether it's Moby Dick, yawn, boring, or Count of Monte Cristo, which I absolutely love. Like I used to read a lot of classic books.
sorry, totally unrelated, but I love the vengeance he goes out and gets in the Count of Monte Cristo, which
Oh,
they
yeah.
don't ever do in the movies.
Yeah, and I guess the Christian version of Monte Cristo would be Ben-Hur. Ben-Hur's kind of just like Monte Cristo, pretty much. Ben-Hur
Well,
is
Ben-Hur,
Monte Cristo with Jesus.
Yeah, Monte Cristo with Jesus. Yeah, no, we didn't have any of that. I mean, they really wanted to do, like in this book, it's talking about keeping you away from the ways of the world, which would have meant, like I said, art and culture, especially.
On the bright side, none of you in school or church were ever exposed to Joseph Smith's god-awful writing.
Oh yeah.
The
Yeah, I
Doctrine
know.
and Covenants is a horrible book.
So I will give you that. Like I had John Bunyan. Okay, I read all C.S. Lewis. I love C.S. Lewis. I can there's some good writers in the Christian section, but in the Mormon section, so far I haven't run across any good books. But
Ender's Game?
but with the Joseph Smith stuff, did they focus on a certain book more than the others? So there's the Book of Mormon, the Pearl of Great Price. There's the Bible. Is there like a favorite?
All books are supposed to be equally important in Mormon doctrine, but you kind of prop up the Book of Mormon because that's the book that proves God loves us best.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's the first alternate history novel, is what it is.
I have to tell
Actually,
you,
no.
Mormon art is very distinct looking. Like, like their version of Jesus is always very distinct looking, and I can never pin exactly what it is. But like when I used to volunteer for Venture Crew, which is an offshoot of the Boy Scouts for,
Oh, yes.
yeah, and the Mormons have super attached themselves to the Boy Scouts, like big
Not
time.
anymore.
Oh, not anymore. They recently didn't. Well, at the time, what, 5 years ago, they were super attached, and
Well, sorry, go ahead.
and at the time we had some meetings in one of their halls, like their fellowship hall. Obviously, we're not allowed in the temple. And I'm looking at their art, going, there's like this distinct look of their version of Jesus, like
White.
white and
Looking at
super
it.
American with perfect teeth.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like Jesus doesn't ever like have any teeth problems or anything like that. Like I don't know what it is, but like there's a certain look that's just kind of Donny Osmond.
Do you feel you got a better or worse education? Each of you individually. I mean, the Mennonite schools from Pennsylvania are actually pretty good usually.
Are they?
Yeah, what do you think
No.
about your education, Headless? Do you feel like you had a good education, bad education? What do you think about that?
The high school I went to, they never got into any of the crazy stuff like you're talking about, or any kind of indoctrination. But that's more because within the Mennonite churches, you don't actually really join the church until you choose to when you're baptized later, when you're older. So they're not indoctrinating you. They don't do that.
Yeah, the Mennonites.
They don't indoctrinate.
You guys didn't have
Okay.
like a Bible study or anything?
We had like, oh, how can I say this? The class, we would have like a half-hour class every couple days because it also went opposite of a chapel day, again for the same half-hour period, except on Friday, I think it was. And it was first called religious study, and then for some reason they changed it to religious knowledge because I don't know why, they just changed it. Someone had an issue with the name of the class. And again, with that half-hour period, you really can't get into much.
So they
And it
fought
was
over the
more like,
word study versus knowledge.
yeah, I don't know why they changed it. I really didn't care to really. It was high school. I really didn't care why they did it. But as far as what they got into in those classes, it's stuff you'd expect to see, like, comparing the four gospels and things like that. It was never anything too heavy-handed or weird.
What about on science and like evolution? Did they ever teach creationism or anything like that?
I can recall my... Oh, what grade was this in? I can't remember what grade level it was, but the biology teacher came into class on the first day, and without anyone saying anything, and this was not at a time when creationism was a thing, he basically just put his foot down and said, "This is a science classroom. We're doing biology, and if you don't like it, get the hell out."
Wow, it's so different in
That's
Canada.
that's the ad-libbed version of what he said. If you don't agree, we're doing a history class, we're doing a science class here in biology. This is what we'll be looking at, and if you don't agree with it, you can leave.
Keep in mind
He
that
will
the Mennonites,
not put up with it. He's not here to put up with it.
the Mennonites are actually pretty liberal compared to many other denominations.
Yeah. Come on, it's not hard to figure out how this shit works when you raise cattle on a farm.
Yeah.
What
You might
about
not
sex?
get the you might not get the big picture of it, but at least you know these cows make these other cows.
So what's sex ed? Like they did they address it at all, really, or directly, or no?
Uh, the high school I went to, we did have some sex ed, but I can't compare that to what others had, or because just at the times what was really being talked about, right? So I really can't compare that to anything else.
You can't really do some biology without some basic sex
Yeah,
education.
it's gonna come up. It's gonna get talked about, and this is how it works. There, right?
So I had zero sex education, shocker, and my sex education was like all in bits and pieces. So like I was a very lonely kid, extremely lonely kid. I wasn't allowed to play with any neighbors or anything like that. So like I was around people that were much older than me. My brothers and sisters were much older than me. The oldest one is like 16 years older than me, and the one that's like closest to my age is 6 years older than me. So it was quite a difference in age. But so I didn't feel comfortable asking my brothers and sisters because that's weird and nobody talks about it in my house and it's freaky. But like I found out about sex in church, in a Baptist church, ironically. And
That can't be good.
one of the
direct experience.
no, one of the starters was one of our Sunday school teachers in 6th grade decided not to show up for whatever reason and didn't tell anybody. And so we're 6th graders, and 6th grade's what, like 12? And we're sitting around going, 11 and 12. Well, what do we do? Our teacher's not here. Should we alert anybody? Of course not. And so we just sit there in our little classroom, and we had like this really tight little mini classroom room, and we were just kind of enjoying that there was no adult there, and we were just talking and visiting. And all of a sudden sex comes up, and I'm completely clueless. I'm the homeschool kid that's like super nerd, have no clue what you're talking about. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And they kept talking about 69, snicker, 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 69. I'm like, I don't know what that is. Like, what are you talking about? And one of the girls draws. She draws. This is in church. This is in a Baptist church. She draws a stick figure and another stick figure, and they're like in the 69 position. And I was like, people do that? And so I learned about 69 and what it was in the Baptist church in 6th grade. So like that was one of my introductions. It was very odd. But yeah. Go ahead.
They didn't tell you in church that sex was filthy and you were supposed to save yourself till marriage, in which case you were supposed to find a return missionary would specifically be a Mormon thing, and that's just kind of weird behavior from them.
Oh, they told us that later. So like they waited for that until we were like junior high. So like that would be like 8th grade or so, like a couple years later. And hold on one second.
Trying to remember what grade I was in when I read "Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret." That's how I learned about sex, except by direct experience. Find it.
Scott says that I was sending my conversation through Bluetooth through his headset, and he was like, "Can you disconnect, please?" I was like, "Oh, sorry." So when 8th grade happened, like we would get these weird sex talks from our youth pastor, and they were awkward as heck.
Oh my God.
And like they usually
The youth pastor felt.
the what? The youth? Yes, kind
How
of.
the youth pastor felt.
Well, think how he
This
felt,
is the first time they've heard of this.
right? So
At least they weren't people from the congregation who've just been volunteered to give them.
so it's
That's what the Mormons do.
So it started out with these controversial beach trips. We're in Southern California, and they were like, let's take all these kids to the beach. And the parents were getting super worried because they're like, well, you better have some rules about bathing suits for girls. And so, like, the youth pastor's like, draws a stick figure, because that's what we like to do in Baptist church. He draws a stick figure and he talks about what zones are acceptable to have uncovered, which is pretty much nothing. And and so he draws the stick figure and he's like, basically no bikinis. You have to wear a one piece if you're a girl, and you should not be walking around in your bathing suit. If you're walking around in your bathing suit and you're not like actually in shorts or a t-shirt too, not cool. If you're actually swimming, you can totally be in your bathing suit. And they were making all these rules up, and then the guys, and they're like, yeah, uncover this area. like, like guys didn't really have much restriction at all.
Wait a minute. Who bought the bathing suits for the kids, and why were the parents worried about what the kids were wearing if the parents were the ones who bought the bathing suits?
So that's the thing. Like, that's what's funny is there was always, because like we had a huge youth group in this particular church, right? So like there was always these kids that were super edgy, and they were like weird, like the cute kids and stuff like that, and they would be like wearing bikinis. And they would always push the issue, and they'd either get sent back home, or they'd have to be like, you have to wear a shirt over that, and whatever. And then there'd be the people that were like, Mom made me wear this Speedo, there's nothing I can do about it. And that was one of those people. I got to wear a Speedo.
Guys just do not look good in Speedos.
Yeah, nobody looks good in a Speedo, because like they just mash everything, and you know.
Spandex. Guys don't look good in spandex either.
Well, girls don't look good in Speedo either. Like the Speedos aren't, they're functional, like for fast swim, but they're not attractive swimwear, no.
No, we never had any swimming parties.
Really?
We had to wear, we had to cover our clavicle. We had to cover our clavicle. We had to cover our legs. So 4 inches below your knee. That was the rule. So luckily at that time, maxi dresses were in fashion. Do you remember those? They go all the way to the ground. They're like weird day dresses, like gowns.
Oh, yeah. I remember those.
And then for sports, we would be wearing something called gauchos. But they would stop to be 4 inches beneath our knee. So it was like running around shooting baskets with like these long flappy things. Oh, it was horrible. But we did it. Yeah.
Did you have dances, or I know at the Mormon dances the rule was a Book of Mormon between you, but
no dancing, no music.
All right, Baptist.
Rock music was of the devil. So, of course, we couldn't listen to that or anything even.
Mama, this rock music's singing about Jesus. It's still the devil.
But the later they got into gospel music, so that was something. That was a thing.
I remember the Satanic Panic of the 80s.
Oh my gosh, do I remember that? And even
That's
that, like,
story for me.
Yeah, if something wasn't satanic, then it was New Age. It was one or the other. It was either New Age or satanic. There would be like a declaration on one of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But was it? I'm sorry, I'm just being curious. But was it all bad? It seems, other than the fact that your science education will be lacking, except in the Mennonite school, because the Mennonites, let's face it, my Mennonite ancestors were farmers. Most Mennonites today still are. Mm-hmm. What was it like for those of you who went to the Baptist? Yeah, go ahead.
No music. Like I was, when everybody in my family, I was the oldest, right? So when we were converted into this church, everybody converted. I had been a drummer with love of music. All of those had to be burned. I was no longer allowed.
You had to burn them? Like literally burn them?
No, literally, like book burnings. There were burnings. So everybody in the church. Well, first you get a big. This happened a couple of times.
So you weren't allowed to read Fahrenheit 451?
Oh, that's such a good book.
Oh, the irony! It wasn't books. The irony if you put that on the
it's a really good joke.
These were record burnings, and so there'd be like a big church service where the guy would be promising that it's best. He would say, we're gonna come forward, and if you come forward at the end of the church service, means you're going to burn your burn your records and shit.
They did that to
The
our,
next
our
day or
summer
something.
camp. Our summer camp, they
Yeah.
did that, and they're like, and my friend burned her Nirvana CD. Her Nirvana CD, she burned it.
Oh my God.
That's why you
Yeah.
gotta bring a decoy CD.
Well, they were all albums back in my day. I can't believe they kept doing that. They really kept doing it.
I don't think they can do that now.
The only thing it ever did was just
Toxic.
drive up music sales in the industry because you had to buy more albums once you burned them.
That's exactly
Yeah.
what happened after people burned it. They were like, I'm going to go buy that again. What was I thinking?
I would get home from school. I would go home from school, come home, turn up the radio on in our house, blasting whatever music I wanted. Whatever, I can't remember the radio station at the time, but I would be blasting the music, looking out the window, waiting for my parents to come home because I had had that turned off and switched on to a different
I used
station
to
by
do
the time
that
they got in.
too. I used to do that too.
Did you too?
I was like, I need to figure out what it's like in the world.
Right?
Other than science education, what was the quality of education like? Because generally most people who push Christian education will point out Christian education produces higher scores, which may be true.
I found that
Partly.
in my case, I was more advanced in how many things I've read, like as far as classic books go and literature. I was more advanced in most of my retention of history. I was more advanced in writing and even basic knowledge of geography and social studies. I was doing well in. I was behind in science and I was behind in math. Science more on the biology end of things, not in like, and then math, for obvious reasons we discussed. So yeah.
Well, if you have dyscalculia, you'll probably have problems with physics and chemistry. So
Yeah, anything with like a lot of equations and stuff like that. I did a little bit better with geometry.
Geometry's logic. I did fine once we got away from the numbers.
Yeah. So it's a different beast. So it's kind of interesting. So I found that I excelled in some ways, like dusted people, and failed in others. And so that was kind of interesting. It left me with kind of a complex, though. It left me with feeling very inferior because what happened was because I was educated in a very bad way. I wasn't accredited at all. I had to get a GED. I flunked my math GED test 5 times before passing. Took me a very long time to get through that. Everything else, like immediately for the first try, like I got everything else. And I even had points extra in my GED, like to where like there's a collective point score that you have, and I would exceed the collective point score, and I'd fail on math. So like I did well on all the other subjects, and even science on that test, because science on that test is a joke. but math I would tank over and over and over again, and it took me forever. And I didn't know why. And then as an adult, knowing why later in community college, it was helpful to kind of help cope with that. So I would say advanced in some ways, behind in others, extremely socially awkward. And I still think I will always be, I'm 40 now. So like, I've accumulated a lot of experiences socially to where I've been able to adapt. But I would say from 17 to 25, maybe even 17 to 27, I was desperately trying to connect with people that were different than me, trying to figure out how to behave. And I'm not a sociopath because I'm empathetic, but I felt like I was mimicking how people behave because I was trying to figure out how to fit in, because I really struggled to fit in because my only peer-to-peer social interaction, being homeschooled and my family dynamic the way it was, I wasn't allowed to play with anybody and like that. Like my only social interaction was Sunday at church and choir practice, and I was in some musicals as a kid. So like those were my social interactions, and so I was really missing a lot of cues. Like I always felt like I was desperately kind of trying to catch up. And I was really disliked in middle school and high school. Well, middle school I was super disliked. I was very unpopular in my church, and because I was different, I was weird. I'm in Southern California, so even if we're Baptists, we're still snobby, right? Like we're snobby little brats.
Mm.
And it was high school where I started to kind of catch up and slowly kind of find some sort of balance between certain social groups. But yeah.
Have you ever been tested for being on the autism spectrum?
No, but I know I'm not autistic because
Mm,
because well, I don't think I am. Um, we can discuss off air why I don't think I am. So,
it's all right.
but I've been told I hug like a person that's autistic.
It it's a spectrum. Maybe you should get tested. I think you're showing some classic signs, but
Or
I'm
it could have
hardly an
been
expert.
homeschooled. Missionary kids and homeschool kids behave a certain way too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, it could just be lack of experience.
Yeah.
But
You really do get set back socially. I did. But then again, I was super willful because like I'd always been like the leader of my peer group or before this, even though it was just a scrubby little group of kids running around, yeah. But and then after that, like when I went back when I finally got so the 2 years I was in this Christian school was I was still like a leader in my peer group there, but they were trying to break my will the entire time. They saw me as a troublemaker. I was targeted by the adults as somebody that was constantly watched more than anyone. Yeah. And then when I went back into high school, I had this different way of dress. Yeah. That was foreign. The kids were like, they didn't know what had happened to me. So 2 years had gone by, which is a huge amount of time in
high school
education.
years.
It is. And so when I got back, they were also I got bullied for all the way from the beginning of the school year through Christmas in 11th grade, with all of my former friends calling me a narc because of just how different I looked and how different I was dressed now. Yeah,
why
they
would you
didn't
be a
know.
narc unless you told on somebody?
Oh no, they didn't understand. I was smoking weed in church by that time. So, I mean, um,
My church would have
but
called you a slut. Just assumed.
well, yeah, well, that's what I got called in church. But when I got back into public school, I'm like wearing high neck and you know, heels and skirts when everybody else is just dressing normally. I was lucky. I had a friend, my best friend. She was also in my church. Um, and what I would do is I would change clothes. She would give me, clothes. I started, this was like the next year. I started to go to school dressed a certain way when I left the house. And then when I, got halfway there, I would just change into normal, regular jeans and a t-shirt type thing.
I've
Yeah.
heard of that. I've heard of
And
that.
then
Like a lot of
switch
kids
back
doing
on
that.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll do what I want.
I hate
Yeah.
all you people who can wear high heels,
Oh, yeah.
especially you, headless chicken.
That needs to be demonstrated.
So one of the concerns I think in homeschooling is if there's abuse in the household, it's usually not caught, and um, that is a very valid concern with that. Do you feel like that is
Mm.
also a valid concern in private schools?
I can only speak from experience, really. I don't know. I know some of the Catholic school kids, they would get their hands wrapped with a ruler. They would get their knuckles wrapped and that sort of thing.
Especially if they were left-handed.
They were talking
Jeez.
about that. Yeah, they would. We would talk as kids and be like, "Oh yeah, I smacked my knuckles with the ruler." But yeah, corporal punishment was big in this church school and the church. So I mean, they constantly preaching about how you should beat your kids until they're whimpering and that sort of shit.
Did teachers
Constantly.
administrate? Were teachers allowed to administrate corporal punishment?
Yes,
They were in my
yes.
school.
I think I might have told you this, but I mean, like I
We
was
lived in a different time, man.
I was given 7 demerits one day just for no reason at all. Right? I know why they did it, but they were just sort of like, okay, that's 7 demerits, and I was like, why? Um, so um, so they did corporal punishment with me, even though my father and mother had said don't touch her. My father said do not touch her. Yeah, because I remember the night before I got these 7 demerits, and I brought them home, told my father, and I was like, he's like, how'd you get that? And I told him, and he was mad. He knew what they were doing to me, and so a whole bunch of other parents came over that night, and they were like, this school is bad, this has happened to my kid too, and blah 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 blah, and they were all talking about it. And my father said to me, oh, you just go ahead and go in, they're not gonna, nothing bad will happen to you. But when I got there, they went ahead, and these 2 ladies, one of them was just like this huge lady, she was the wife of the principal. They put me into a closet with a copy machine. There was the copier closet.
In the closet?
In,
Like one
yeah,
person with you, or 2 people, or all alone?
there was 2 ladies, one like regular size lady and one giant size lady. I mean, like she was just huge. Like she had to wear tents. Yeah, but there was no way I was going to be able to force my way past her. And plus, I wasn't a violent kid. I wasn't like somebody who would try to get away. Yeah, but she was standing with her arms crossed in front of the door, and they were going to beat me with this paddle until I prayed for forgiveness. And
Oh my
like
gosh,
because
it's
I
like
had
freaking
no
Carrie.
idea,
Jesus.
so I had no idea what I was supposed to be praying for. But I didn't do it. And so like I think I told you, it ended up that they had to beat me with this thing for like so long that they were crying. Both of them were like, tears were coming down their face and shit. And I started feeling sorry for them. So I was just like, okay, I'll pray. Yeah, I'll say a prayer. And they were like, oh God, thank God. So I said a prayer so it could just be all over with. Yeah. But I was really traumatized by that
That's
experience because I was, let's see, I would have been in 10th grade. So how old was I in 10th grade?
Sophomore. So 10th grade.
15?
14, 15.
15.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, yeah.
It's insane. That's
This
that's
was,
like
this
that's like
was,
some Carrie shit.
yeah.
The worst trouble I got into high school involved a detention, which I ended up skipping because it was right before I graduated.
My
I never
mom
got detention. It's
my
like
mom
weird. I
tried
went to
to
public school.
my mom chased me around the table once cuz I said something about church sucking. I said like church really sucked and I don't think I want to come back. Like I was talking about Sunday church and how annoyed I was, and at the time I was like middle school, and like she chased me around like, don't you say that word sucks, and she was trying to slap me, like full on slap on the face, just because I said the word sucks. It was hilarious. I don't know why I think it's funny now, but like what's really fascinating is the behavior that was acceptable, the 80s and the 90s,
Mm,
and some folks in the 70s. Like, it was not acceptable once my nephews like got to my age. My nephews were like, I
that's
was,
good.
I,
Yeah.
I was 10 years older than my nephew, so like
Hmm.
once they got older, like that same behavior wasn't happening anymore.
I
Like
had, yeah, I had a sister who was born when I was 16. Okay. So, um, trying to think, she ended up um, going through a similar thing like years later in the church where they were. She would call me. Yeah, I was ostracized from my family pretty much. She called me and told me something that happened. And what it was that happened to her in the same church with different youth pastor and that sort of thing. Is the pastor came over to her. She had had an experience with a boy outside the church, where he was basically abusing her. And so I knew about that. And then and then youth pastor came out and like looked her up and down. She said, um, and said something about calling them either sluts or whores, probably whores, right? You girls are dressed like whores. And I heard this story and I got so angry. It just, like, I was at the point in my life where I was away from them, away from that church, hadn't been there in years. I got in my car and I drove over to the same parsonage where basically it was a church and two houses on this property. One the pastor lived in and one the youth pastor lived in. So I drove up to the youth pastor's house, called him on the phone because I had a phone in my car at that point. I literally had a car phone. Called him on the phone. It was a Saturday, and he was like, "Okay, well, if you wanted to talk to me, like I tricked him into talking to me. I said I have some issues I'd like to talk to you about concerning my sister, and it's private." And so he's like, "Okay, well, come in the next day." And so the next day was a Sunday, and I'd have to come after church. So all my family was in church that day, and I arrived at the end of the church service to meet this pastor and go into his office. And I had a witness with me, so I took my then boyfriend with me. And so we're sitting in this little room, and there's like a row of 3 or 4 chairs that go maybe 4 deep. He sat down behind me. And so I said, "What you did to my sister." I started ripping into him. I said, "I want to explain something to you. I went through the same shit that she did, almost exactly. And I don't know how it's turned out this way, but almost the exact same thing happened to me as is happening to my sister. And I'm not going to let you do this anymore." I said, he picks up his Bible and he's like, "Hold on a minute," and he's waving his Bible at me, and I'm looking him directly in the eye. And I said, "Put your Bible down." And he literally dropped the Bible. I don't know if it was on purpose, but like he dropped the Bible and it like landed on the desk with a big thump. It was so satisfying. And I said, "Look, I'm going to tell you something. I'm not fooling around anymore. If I hear any more stories of you messing with my sister from now to the end of the school year, and I will find out about it." I said, "I am coming in here with a news team in tow, and I'm going to expose not only what you're doing to her, but what you guys all did to me when I was in this church." He was really scared. And I said, "One other thing, you do not talk to my parents about the conversation I'm having with you." And then I got into telling him some shit about like the trauma could, what they were doing to my sister could traumatize her and cause her to end up, ending up in a sex industry and shit like that. Right? So it's really making him scared. Yeah. And then and to come find out later, he never told my parents what we had talked about. They were waiting for me as I came out. Me and Randy, who had gone in there with him. And when I went out, I was just very friendly. I said, "Hi, how are you doing?" "Yeah, I'm sorry, I gotta go." And then I left, give my mom and dad, who I hadn't seen in ages, a hug and a kiss, and then I left. He never told them anything that I said, and they did not bother my sister for the rest of the school year. So that
Oh,
was,
wow.
I felt really good about telling that story. So, but I was so mad. And plus, I actually did contact the authorities about this because my sister would call me and tell me that they were beating little kids, like toddlers, through their diapers and shit. They were spanking them. They were practicing this form of fucking, um, discipline on children, even as toddlers. And she, growing up in that church, understood that what they were doing was wrong. So I said, "Okay, let
Did you
me
get a new follower?
call the police." And they said that they would go in and investigate, but I needed a witness. I needed somebody to come forward and testify, and nobody was willing to do that. My sister wasn't.
But usually it's something like, maybe it was at the time, but many, many years ago, back when the news about the FLDS broke, especially the child bride thing, they were essentially ratted out by someone who was prank calling them. But because of the nature of the charges, the FBI had to investigate and found out the accusations that were supposed to be pranks were true.
Oh, what?
So I
Tell
have
more,
to wonder.
more about that. I'm curious about that. I know it might be off topic after I went and took us on a
Oh,
little journey down, sexual trauma.
Well,
But
our
what happened?
our conversations on Moderate SeaWorld were fairly fluid, so it's okay to go on bunny trails here and there. So
Bringing it back on topic, wouldn't the police be required to investigate something like that now?
Well, now, yeah, this was back then, though.
I had to wonder if maybe it was just the time
Yeah.
when it happened, I mean.
yeah, I would say
by the time
70 and
this had
80s,
happened,
those were coming to light, I think. But even in the 90s,
it would have been early 90s, I think, when this happened
Yeah, early 90s.
with my sister. Yeah.
It should have been getting to the point where those laws were changing.
yeah,
They
probably.
were starting to change. Yeah.
And the FLDS happened in 2005. It was shortly after my mother died, if I recall
Yeah.
correctly.
That I don't know. I knew nothing about the Mormons except what they had always taught us, that the Mormons were of the devil too. You know, all the other churches were bad.
Yeah,
All of
the
them.
Mormons don't like the
Catholics.
Baptists either.
I know. Oh my God, I should tell you the funny story about the time when my youth group and the Mormon youth group were out. Well, the Mormons were out soul winning in the same area. So we were literally on the same street and we
Soul
encountered each
fighting.
other.
Soul Wars.
Right?
In this episode of Soul Wars.
And you could tell because of the way they were dressed, but they were Mormons and everything, right? But
Oh, you mean
we
the
were
missionaries. All right.
we were knocking on doors and they were knocking on doors. So my youth pastor goes up to them, the two men, and he starts mocking them. And he was using me as a prop. So he was saying my name and he was like, "Did you know X about the Mormons and what they believe?" And I was like, "No, what?" And then he was like, "Yeah, they actually believe." And when he got to the part where he says, "And they believe like Joseph Smith had the golden plates," and then they were just snatched up into the air. I remember him saying it like
Yeah,
really like that. The guy started coming at him. The guy was going to punch him out. They almost got into a fist fight
if you
right then
want.
and there. I literally stepped between them. I was like, "Hold on, guys."
I never got the Mormons believe these weird things. It's like the only reason most average Christians think they're weird is because they don't really understand that if you don't believe in Christianity and weren't raised that way, you're going to find most of what Christians believe weird too.
I think Joseph
Really
Smith
sick, though.
himself is extremely questionable. I think that's why I never understood the appeal for Mormonism. Like,
Because
sort of like the way I think that, like, I get the appeal to Buddhism by far. Like, totally get that. Like, and Taoism I get, like, the appeal to. But Mormonism with Joseph Smith as this leader, he's so questionable. But I don't know if the average Mormon has that view of Joseph Smith. I don't think they do.
it's a bit more complicated because the information age has not allowed the church to control information as much as they'd like. So growing up, even in the Mormon church, you'll be presented this really nice whitewashed history of Joseph Smith that makes him sound like a perfect human being, and you won't know things like Fanny Alger, the Nauvoo expositor, that he threw a Masonic hand sign when he was executed at the Carthage jail,
I didn't know
or
that.
that he
I didn't know that.
translated rocks from a hat, or yeah, his translation was looking into a hat.
Like the
Yes.
fact that people viewed him as a con man.
Yeah, well, they just said that was a false story. Just dismissed it that way, and they got away with it until they found the court records where he'd been convicted before he started translating the Book of Mormon.
Interesting.
But Mormon history is bizarre, and it's a different topic for another time.
Yeah, definitely. Otherwise, some of the appeal to Mormonism is appealing. The idea that Jesus reaches out to the natives, our First Nations people, and American natives, is appealing. I don't think that's not appealing at all. I think that's kind, and that's how you would wish. You know, like if you believed in Jesus, that's how you would wish that he would do. He would reach out to all people, right? Like that's an
Right.
appealing side, I think.
That, and you always get a second chance in Mormonism.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, you die in an apostate state like I intend to, but
Oh my goodness.
What if your family, your descendants, pay for your soul? Can they get you into a better place?
I don't really know what... They don't pay for your soul. They baptize you by proxy.
Okay, can they baptize you by proxy? Mixing up that and selling in
Technically, they shouldn't
indulgences,
be
sorry.
able to, because I'm not going to leave descendants, but that hasn't stopped Mormons from doing things like baptizing Holocaust victims. Like I said, Mormonism is bizarre.
Yeah, definitely an interesting side topic. But yeah, Mormonism is interesting. Steve's a Mormon. How I got through the whole stream without mentioning him. Like, he's an ex-Mormon.
He's a Mormon.
Ex-Mormon. I always found that
Sure,
He was
interesting.
an ex-Mormon who converted
Allegedly.
because a sister missionary was cute,
Right?
which is usually not the case for sister missionaries.
Oh,
Can you
well.
have more than one spouse in Mormon? Or not? Just one husband
It's a
and wife?
complicated theological issue.
I see.
I think what happened, and maybe I'm wrong, but maybe it seemed like Mormons were down with having multiple wives, and then the government said, "Oh my God, you're seizing all this land, and all these problems are going to happen," and then they were like, "Oh no."
It was a lot more to do with Brigham Young's personality. But technically, in order to get into the highest degree of the Mormon heaven, which they call the celestial kingdom, if you're a guy, you have to have at least 3 wives. You're not allowed to have more than one wife in this lifetime because it's illegal. When they issued, I think it's called Official Declaration 1, they never repudiated the doctrine. They just said it's the law of the land, you're going to follow it.
Okay.
So you're never going to make it to the top level. Ta!
Well, you can marry in the next life.
But can't the dude, this is such a side topic, so we probably should get away from it,
Yes,
but can't
you
the
should.
dude
Go back to
say, because doesn't he have to reach out and choose you from the veil? What if he decides to not choose you from the veil and you're married to him all your life, but then he's like, no, I don't want to choose you from the veil? Is that an option for a Mormon?
I think so, but
I don't want that wife. We're going to keep her in the veil.
I think you just get assigned to another husband because they never quite really go into how spirit children are produced, but you're left with the impression that it's the
Spirit
same way physical children are produced.
It's kind of a
There's
carnal
something called
goal.
spirit.
Yeah, spirit babies. So like
Yeah.
there's these spirit babies that are waiting to be born, and that's why it's your duty as a Mormon to make
As
this
a-
happen. I've
Oh,
even
wow.
run into non-Mormons that think something kind of like that there's some sort of amount of spiritual beings that God's created that are just waiting to inhabit a woman.
In Mormonism, you have to get busy to make the spirit babies in the afterlife
In the afterlife. Okay.
after
That's
you've
so
been perfected and resurrected.
I feel like a man has invented this religion. Shocker.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this definitely comes from the mind of a man.
But
Then again, I don't know why I say that. Could have been a woman. You never know.
No, it was definitely a man. We know who did it.
Okay.
I'm kind of surprised that we don't have anybody from Catholic school in the mix. I really had hoped that we would, because most of the time people that go to Catholic school, with the exception of strictness, as far as scholastics go, they have good things to say. As
Yep.
far as strictness goes, sometimes they have negative things to say. So it was kind of interesting. But I didn't have anybody that said, hey, I went to Catholic school. I was a little bit surprised.
Anyone date anyone from Catholic school? I mean, I've heard some rumors about those.
My 2 oldest siblings, my family was Catholic, and then so my grandfather's a boater. He came from Ireland and immigrated, so he had the accent and everything. And so like I'm only 3rd generation, so it it was pretty obvious since like they didn't come from Northern Ireland because that's where the Protestants are. Everybody was Catholic. So everybody in my family was Catholic, including my mother. And then my mother, for some reason, married a Protestant. And in order for him to marry her, he had to become a Catholic. So he briefly became a Catholic and then ended up switching back, going, never mind, I don't believe this BS. And eventually, my mom in the 80s moved from being a Catholic in the 70s and the 60s and stuff, and then moving into Protestantism. So I was the first out of 5 kids to be raised as a Protestant, where everybody else was raised as a Catholic. So that was kind of interesting. But my first 2 oldest siblings were actually grew up in Catholic school, so they weren't homeschooled.
I wasn't going anywhere good with it, but I was hoping to confirm some rumors from a guy who might have dated someone from a Catholic school. But headless chicken.
That they're easy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious, after you got out of the Mennonite school, did you have any problems going to a college or anything? And this is a question to all of you.
No.
Cool.
Yes, because I wasn't accredited. I didn't go to accredited school. So again, I had to get a GED, and then if you do a GED and then 2 years of community college, then nobody really asks any questions. You just have to do 2 years of community college.
Yeah,
You go to the new school?
the school I went to was an actual high school.
Sorry, could
Oh yeah, so I 2 years in this Christian school set me back. Once I got back into public school, they didn't know what to do with me. So they put me on a track for working. So I learned to type, maybe did some classes part-time and was working. So I was on working for an orthodontist
that doesn't
part of the day and going to school part day.
sound like
That's-
fun.
It was fun because what
Alright.
we would
It
do.
kind of
I had
reminds me of
two
like
girl- two-
finishing school or something.
like I had my car at that time. I was driving when I was 16, so I did go through driver's ed and that sort of thing.
It might just be
But-
my irrational fear of dentists.
Yeah, we do our orthodontic work with this old guy. Oh my God, we used to laugh at him so hard. And on Wednesdays we would clean the place, and he wasn't there, so we would be there playing our music and getting high and cleaning the little house that he used as an office. So we had fun. We just fucked off for 2 years, really.
Just fucked off for 2 years. That was
But
my
there was
education.
there
I'm
was
kidding.
no way that I was prepared for anything other than working for a dentist after I graduated. So that was that. That's what I was looking at.
Oh, interesting. So they kind of forced you into a trade, is what I'm understanding. Did they do that with
and
everybody?
it was a low paying trade as well. You didn't, back in the day when I was doing this, you didn't have to have a license to become a dental assistant.
No.
Yeah, the dentist could just train you themselves in what they wanted us to do.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, then, of course, you don't want women to be in high-paying jobs because then they can't quit to stay home to raise the children.
That's right.
It was bad. It was really bad because the pay was so low. I remember at one point, I mean, it was equal pay to what it would cost me to keep my daughter in childcare right after she was born. So, I mean, it was bad. It was that low. So, yeah. But then again, like I said, I didn't have a long education. I just had 2 years of my education disrupted in this church school.
When did
And
you first start your job, like your orthodontist job?
Okay, so it would have been in 11th grade. 11th and 12th grade I was working.
That was
for,
about when I started working. So like I worked in a grocery store at 16, so that would be junior in high school.
Mhm.
But that wasn't because of education. That was just because my family was poor and needed a contribution to living.
Oh,
So
God.
Yeah.
So that's
yeah,
why.
I was getting paid. I was definitely getting paid. It just wasn't very much.
yeah, my paycheck went to the family fund. I would call it the compound. Like I was joking, but like kind of serious. Like there's a joke, and I still joke because like so much of my family does live together, and I call it the family compound. And the only two that really have broken out of it is myself and my oldest brother. Everybody else is sort of in the compound.
I
And
brought up Steve
I,
earlier.
I, I, I use humor with that, but it's because we're stubborn and Irish, and Irish people don't like to take welfare, apparently. And so the way to battle out poverty is for the family to stick together and live together. So
The earlier mention of Steve McRae just reminded me that not only are we both ex-Mormons, but we both scored high enough on the ASVAB to get into the Navy's nuclear program.
Yeah,
I hate
That's
having that in common with him.
that's pretty wild.
I've held the same jobs after he left the military as he has, but I didn't go to nuke school, so I don't know.
Oh, I didn't make it out of boot camp for different reasons, but
That's
Were
what I
you the
think's the irony
military
is
all
like,
back home?
no. I said I didn't go to nuke school, but he was a Radio Shack manager at one point, and so was I, and I thought that was funny.
there are so many things about him that just make me wonder. But let's discuss the ordinance in Headless Chicken's Mennonite school, because I'm
Right.
pretty sure they didn't have one, because that's usually Old Order Mennonite and Amish, and the word just means rules.
Yeah, that's all it means.
Jay was homeschooled. I'm going to see if he can come in and talk with us. 1 second here. Let me add him. I think Jay and I have talked about this before, actually. Hang on, Jay. I'm going to add you. I just got to find the thing.
Did they
I
teach
think
you German?
Huh?
Did they teach you any German?
There was
Other than ordnance. But
well, we didn't have
Sorry, go ahead.
foreign languages. There was German and there was French.
okay.
Okay, but I never took either. We got
Yeah,
to
it sounds
pick
like-
classes.
Sounds like it was a more normal high school than the other two.
Yeah, I
had.
said it was. It's a normal high school.
And many people don't realize that the Mennonites have actually been siding with the protesters from the beginning.
Uh,
Some Mennonites, not all. But,
you mean that photo of the people dressed in plain clothes?
well, those were Amish, I think. But
Yeah, you got to watch what group it is, though.
well, the problem is there are some Mennonites who just aren't any different than any other Protestant sect, because
Yeah. No, I'm saying that photo of the people in the plain clothes, you got to watch, because there are groups out there who do dress in plain clothes who are not Amish or Mennonite.
the Brethren are one.
You can't call them that because they're not Amish or Mennonite.
But I think in this case they were Amish, or at least the media said they were.
And there are, well, the media doesn't always get things right. Look at assault rifle. And there's also
Actually, an assault
some
rifle
groups-
is the right term. Assault weapon is the wrong term.
There's also groups out there that are also, they come from the Amish, but they're kind of breaking off of it.
Yeah, the Anabaptist movement is more than
Yeah.
just the Amish and the Mennonites.
And Anabaptist people are super likable. Like I can't say anything about my experiences with the Anabaptists have always been actually really positive. And maybe partially because they're very sensible, like Methodists. So I worked in church for like 15 years. And so after I left the Baptist stuff, I got into a church that was related to Methodism. And Methodists are very, very socially driven. And I know that I hear a lot of Calvinists sneer at it and call it the social gospel. You know, like the Methodist Church was highly involved in why we have welfare. It's a little more political, very quick to like back equal rights, things like that.
Yeah,
And Anabaptists are very similar, except Anabaptists amp it up a little bit more, and they're like anti. At least the Anabaptists I know are like almost pacifists. They don't believe that you should ever shoot anybody or take up arms. It's interesting.
the Mennonites and Amish back in Pennsylvania were all pacifists.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Not just almost pacifists, they were flat out like, we're not going to engage in violence.
Yeah, I think the Anabaptist has the same idea going on. Like I know that Benjamin L. Corey is a writer and blogger, and he talks about Christian pacifism a lot, and he's Anabaptist.
Well, Anabaptist is actually the name of the movement that started the Brethren, the Mennonites, and the Amish, and several other offshoots. It's not an organization itself, as far as I know. It just refers to their belief in adult baptism.
It's a category, right? It's a category.
Yeah.
Very popular in Switzerland during the Protestant Reformation.
That's where it comes from.
Because the coolest YouTubers are descended from Swiss Mennonites.
Yeah, no. I'm descended from Catholics.
I was referring to Apologia a bit.
Oh, Apologia. He's descended from Mennonite, really?
He's descended from Swiss Mennonites. He's actually said that on his channel.
I did not know that. That's interesting. He has a gentle kind of feel to him. Like he's very
That's,
chill.
I think that's because he's Canadian.
Maybe that's what
So
it
is
is.
Headless. So is Headless. He's not gentle.
I've seen Headless lose it.
Mm-hmm.
Headless, as an American, can we ask you a favor? For Canada to do something? Would you come invade us?
Yes, please.
I mean, you did attack the White House a long time ago.
We're easy
That was the
marks at this
British.
point, too. I was the British. This is not part of my history
Well,
that I'm aware of.
Canada was part of Great Britain at the time. Or the British Empire.
Right. Well, they still kind of are part of the what you call it, the what's the word?
The Dominion, I think they call it.
That's not the word. Y'all say God save the Queen still.
God save the Queen.
He's not answering.
He's gone. Is Jay coming? Is Jay coming in?
I don't know. He keeps saying not seeing a way to join, and I keep telling him to join Discord. Let me see if he's actually joined Discord, and then I'll figure it out. 1 second here. Oh my gosh, I did a thing.
All right, I got it.
Oh my gosh, I'm putting you back. Okay, 1 second here.
He heard us. He's all. It's like, why are these Americans begging us to invade them?
Oh my gosh, invade us. Oh
And I'd
great,
be
we're
like,
gonna get
"This is our
reported.
country lately."
Trying to incite an invasion of Canada.
No. I don't want to
Canada.
invade Canada. It's not the Fallout scenario. I want Canada to invade us.
I was thinking that we'd just run across the border and ask for sanctuary, but I don't know.
The thought had crossed my mind shortly after Trump were elected. If,
It did for a lot of
Sanctuary.
people. Yeah.
well, not just because he's not really good on LGBT rights.
Well,
No,
do you,
he's just horrible. He's in general. He's
speaking
horrible
of
to everybody.
shenanigans with private schools and stuff like that, did you see the recent thing with Betsy DeVois?
Oh my God, that woman. That
Betsy
woman.
DeVos is evil.
Yeah, she's trying to basically knock down not only LGBT issues like equal
People
right
with
things,
disabilities too.
but disabilities, and now also what was the other one? Oh, race. Race is the other one. Basically getting rid of all the anti-discrimination stuff in schools.
And she's from what? Minnesota?
Oh my God.
Yeah,
I think her son is a mercenary.
well, she's for pretty much not being public school. She wants everybody to go to private and charter school, basically. Just get rid of public schools.
Public schools are a good thing.
Not according to her.
Who's this? I just got back.
Betsy DeVos. By the way, would you come invade us, please?
Some rich person that Trump appointed to be in charge of education.
And she's the wife of the head of Amway, I think.
Her son is the one that has these mercenary contracts, right?
I
As
don't
well.
know.
Yeah.
So many
You have to
American wars are
you have to look into him. He's got quite a part to play in a lot of government contracts. Just instead of having the military operations, he'll do, basically he's a mercenary.
a lot of Americans' war machines are just being used to enrich billionaires at this point. So,
Yep. 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 It's time to burn a bunch of shit down,
God damn it! If I'm gonna
so
live in
to
a
speak.
cyberpunk dystopia, I want cybernetics,
Right?
or maybe something like they have in Altered Carbon, where you can like just, you know,
But it's bad.
don't like your body, get a new one.
Talking about rioters, it looks like to me that a lot of police are the ones that are rioting, more so
Oh.
than the protesters.
I was arguing with that. Well, not really arguing, but someone was trying to say it's like it wasn't far right groups coming in to instigate these riots. I'm like, yes, it was.
Who knows who they are? They're not wearing identification.
Oh, those are the officers, but there are a bunch of people
Teens.
who've been trying to start what they call the Boogaloo, and
Oh,
the Department of Homeland Security doesn't deny that it's happening.
Is the Boogaloo electric?
Yes, it's referring to that movie. I mean, if I were going to start an insurrection, I would have chosen Red Dawn, but maybe it was just
Red Dawn.
Pull him in here. Pull Jay in.
Where is he? You have mod.
said he's
Can you
in
do
this-
it? Can you do it? Because it messes up my
If I can see
screen.
him, if I can find him, hold on a minute. What's his name? Jay Passive.
Yeah. Well,
Jay.
he went into Dragoon Syndicate instead of
Oh,
moderate C word, and then I told him to come in the moderate C word, but he's gonna need a promotion once he comes in. But like, I don't think he's joined.
Get him, as long as he picks a room to join.
Jay, if you're there, go to moderate C word. I linked it to you on the Dragoon server. Go to this server, and then we promote you, and you can speak. There.
I should probably ask for an invitation from Dragnok to that server.
should.
But it
Why
just
not?
amuses me that Shani shows up anyway in my streams.
Oh,
It's like, I've never heard of you before.
so he says he's joined. Okay, hang on.
Where
So
do the people who join show up?
Hold on a second here.
Okay, thanks, Heathens.
What role are we giving him?
just put him as member.
Porpoise's left-hand flipper is one of my
There we
favorites.
go.
I like to call it your lucky fin.
But it's not like it exists
He
in this
now
server.
has it, so if he's listening, he can join the live chat thing to come talk.
We're in here.
There he is.
Yes.
Yes.
Success.
We brought one in.
Hello.
There we go. I'm not
Guten-
that savvy with Discord on my mobile.
Guten Nacht.
So we were talking about our experiences as being either homeschooled or being raised in a Christian education, in private school. We have two private school people. I was a homeschooler. Jay, which one are you?
Homeschool.
Okay,
And
and
what do you have in common with Steve McRae?
oh god.
White. That's about it.
White. I'm white.
Oh, we served in the armed forces. That's two. Him Navy, me Army.
So Jay and we've talked a little bit about our experiences and stuff. Jay, at the time when you were homeschooled, was it accredited or non-accredited?
It depends on the time frame. So I was homeschooled from the time I can remember, from the very beginning all the way till I was 18. So at first it wasn't accredited. It was illegal in the state of Michigan at the time. And then it got to a point where there was kind of a fuzzy area, and then there was finally an accredited. There was accredited programs that you could join, and that's what we did. We had to join an accredited program and pay dues every month or every year or whatever, and that gave us our accreditation for our high school diploma.
So you and I both started when it was illegal in our states to be homeschooled, but our parents chose otherwise. They're like, yeah, we don't care.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, my mom didn't like public school, even though she was an honor roll student. My dad was a C&D student. he didn't really much care. He kind of got better educated when he got older. He was more into cars and music, so. But yeah, he didn't have any problem with sending the kids to public school, but he kind of did. I was like, well, that's what you want to do, hon. So she homeschooled us for a while.
Now,
Did you
when
have really rocking celebrities to look up to, like the Osmonds?
What? What was that about the Osmonds?
really
Oh, the
rocking
Osmonds.
celebrities, look out! Listen, they had beautiful teeth.
No, when I was being homeschooled, I don't even think the Osmond kids were born yet. Well, maybe.
Yeah, they were. They showed up in the 70s.
I don't know. I don't know.
Unless you were a kid in the 60s.
No, I was a kid. No, I was born in the 70s.
Okay, yeah, I was born in the 70s too.
I thought you were talking about. I'm sorry. I heard Osmond. I was thinking Osborne.
Oh no!
Ozzy.
Osmond. They were a singing duo with like
Yes,
golden
no,
smiles.
they were around before I was born. Yes. No, the Osmonds. No, I can give some. I got tortured with some of their shit when I was younger because my mom liked to reminisce, but
What was it like in your school? In your schooling?
isolated. Best way to define it.
Was it just you, or did you have siblings? How did it?
Yeah, I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters.
Okay, so it was all of you, just your siblings.
Yeah, I think my older sister may have been. She was in a public school for I think a couple years. They joined a church. We were in a non-denominational church that was also a private school. But it was before my brother and I were actually of age to start school, even though we did start a little bit at that time. And then that church disbanded, so everybody became homeschooled.
Who was your primary teacher? Your mother or your father?
Both, but mostly my mom, and for good reason. My dad's a pretty good teacher. Not much patience for math, though.
Somebody has to work too, right? He has to go out and earn some money.
Well, yeah, he worked for GM, and then eventually my mom started working again once we were of old enough age to just basically teach ourselves.
And if I were to put the and or truth tables before you and ask you to complete them, could you do it successfully?
The and or truth tables?
Never mind that it has
No,
nothing
no,
to
go
do with
ahead.
religious education.
I don't know what that means. I don't know what that is.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Boolean logic. Steve routinely screws them up.
No.
Oh, is this
considering
his
the fact
P
that-
not P crap?
Oh,
considering
P
the
not
fact that it
P.
was-
It's
yeah,
much
considering
simpler than that.
considering the fact that it was just being introduced to epistemology that kind of got me away from Christianity. Yeah, I was homeschooled, fundamentalist Christian.
Oh, okay, you too.
So, you were raised like, was your science curriculum just creationism, or did you cover evolution at all?
Yeah, we did creationism, and Becca does a really fine job of trying to discredit evolution.
Oh, I'd like to hear more about that. I've heard that name before.
Becca curriculum. Yeah, their math textbooks are freaking phenomenal. Their math curriculum, even though I have no mind for math. For my cousin, him using that when he eventually had to go to home or public school, he was 3 grades ahead. But everybody wanted to fight him because he was a homeschooler, so then he ended up dropping back 3 grades. He'd have graduated at 16 if he hadn't been in so many fights.
How long ago was this? Because most schools do not have, at least public schools have a zero tolerance violence policy now.
Oh, this was in the 90s, early 90s.
Yeah. We used to we were always getting into fights.
Yeah, in
We
the
solved our problems
90s,
as
like
children.
in the 90s,
beat
people
each
would
other up.
fight like in
Well,
public schools.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, those fights didn't happen in schools. They knew to schedule them because it was a small community with a lot of teenagers that like to go around cruising. So they would always schedule those fights at like a parking lot somewhere.
Also, No, I
Fight
got
after school.
Or
Yep.
at recess or
Mhm.
after school. Yep.
And then I remember in high school, some people, because Pennsylvania, especially the coal regions, had a huge problem with neo-Nazi groups, would go down to a certain town every weekend to beat up skinheads.
Oh yeah? What town is that?
The town in question is a place called Shamokin.
Yeah,
Shamokin.
sounds
I've
like
heard
a
of that.
pirate. Sounds
Yeah.
like a pirate. It sounds like a Viking colony where they're like, you know what we do for fun, folks, because we're all seem to be of the same lineage. We're gonna go across the way and we're gonna beat up the people that don't agree with agree with us.
Gosh, I thought that was just Northern Ireland versus Ireland.
That could be most tribalism, couldn't it?
After
Exactly.
it died down a bit, I lived there for a year, and my current roommate came out to visit me one day, and she did not believe my descriptions of the town, like, because it's an old coal mining town, there are houses that are condemned but they can't tear down
I got that beat.
because people are living in other parts of the houses, and there is a
My
huge coal mountain that they're proud of right outside of town.
They're so
And
proud. Proud coal miners.
she
Yeah.
didn't
my
believe me. Sorry, go ahead.
my hometown is the founding place of the KKK in the north.
Yeah, well, I grew up in North Pennsylvania, not part of the coal regions, but I'm describing this town, which
Mhm.
was
Oh, yeah.
a Tosh.0 shithole of the week. Unsurprisingly,
Yeah.
when she came into this town, she's like, the first thing she says to me about it is, "This town is every much the shithole you described it as."
Actually, I had to drive. Yeah, I had to drive to East Lansing before I ever saw a black person.
Yep.
Really?
White. Very white areas. I know. I'm from the same.
I've never.
Yeah.
That's one thing that. I mean, I didn't have any friends because I wasn't allowed to actually talk to anybody, but I saw people that were different races because I was in Southern California, so there was that. But I wasn't allowed to have any friends. I was completely, with the exception of church, I had no friends.
You should have said. You just.
What's that?
Messed up.
Every once in a while there was this thing called TV, and I was seeing images of things which they said represent reality, but those people were just of a totally different color.
Oh my God! Right?
Mhm.
I remember.
Is this a cartoon we're watching? No, sweetie, it's not.
My
Er-
hometown had a few black families. They weren't the majority by any means, but they were there.
We had zero. Oh, let me see. A town of about close to 10,000 people. Let me see. The variety was, at least at the time I can remember growing up, was one Hispanic family and one Vietnamese family.
But my hometown's most famous resident was Hector Boiardi.
I
Chef
don't
Boyardee.
know Hector Boiardi, but Boiardi, I know. Okay, yeah, okay, Chef Boiardi.
Boiardi.
Yep.
Well, then you had
Oh my
Hershey
God.
over there, like close to you.
Yeah. Hershey.
That's
Jackass.
southeastern
Jackass.
Pennsylvania, also not in the coal regions.
And Benjamin
Jackass.
Franklin.
You
Jackass took ravioli and put it in a can and turned it into equivalent of crack cocaine. Yeah.
Good.
And every pothead's best friend.
So- So Jay, when you were homeschooled, did you have any difficulty transitioning out of homeschool to like outside? Like I don't know if you went straight to a career, straight to a military, or straight to like college.
Good question. Yeah, I went right into the military like a dumbass.
That's not necessarily a bad choice. I mean, if you clearly made it, so.
For you don't know me.
Well, I assume
no,
you made it farther than I did. Right.
I made it. Yeah, I made it my first enlistment. Made that out so I could get married, and then I did another 6 years National Guard. But yeah, the transition from coming out of being homeschooled and then going into, because I was kind of a gap at that point. I got my brother and I both got our high school diploma through a satellite school, and then I was basically trying to figure out where I was going to go. And I saw my brother's frustrations with trying to do college, especially with the way my parents felt. we should finance things and stuff. And it was just like, I don't know what I want to do. And then finally I was given an ultimatum and by my father, and I said, okay, fine. So I joined the infantry. And that was a big, I mean, it wasn't like the biggest mistake in my life, but yeah, it was a hard transition. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way, but yeah, I got through it.
I think I told you this. In my church, there was this kid who, his name's Scott, and I'm married to a Scott too. It's funny, but in my church, he was an annoying kid, and his sister was our age, and she was pretty annoying too. But he was really annoying, and they were homeschooled and just really awkward. And this is somebody awkward saying that they're awkward. Well, the boy who was a little bit younger than me, he ended up working at my job in a grocery store, and he was completely helpless. Like, this guy, like, how do I mop a floor? I don't know. And like, I had to show him how to mop a floor because I'm like, I'm homeschooled, but I mopped a floor, like he just,
Oh, yeah.
for some reason, did not know how to do anything. And so he decided that he wanted to prove to his dad that he was a real man. Like, his dad just was putting him down a lot, and he said, I'm going to join the Marines and I'm going to show him. And I remember talking him out of it, and I what I said, like, echoes in history. And like, I know, like, you can't really speak ill will upon people, but
No, you can. I do it to Steve McRae all the time.
but I said to him, I said to him, don't join the military. You're like the virgin that's the youngest of 5 kids that drinks milk. You're not gonna, like, make it through the end of the movie. Do not join the military. That's what I told him. And he joined the military, made it up his ranks, and he ended up getting killed. And I kind of felt awful for ever saying that to him, but I tried to talk him out of it, and I said, you're like the, the trope, in the movie.
At least he made something of himself, at least to where he felt satisfied with where he was at, and he made it up through the ranks. I mean,
Yeah.
He could have been a complete derelict and died in a car accident from just being a drunk or something.
No, he did. He did. And then I read through his, an article where people were talking about him, and even his family, after he died, the things that they said were really weird.
Can I add something?
Excuse me for
quick?
interrupting. Sorry.
Well, no, I just wanted to add something, just kind of an annotation. No, I'm
Yeah,
not.
but I want to bring up some problem with your microphone.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm not implying that.
No, Jay, you got to talk into the microphone. We can't hear you.
Yeah,
Well,
that's what I'm trying to bring up.
Yeah, I'm on my phone. If it's not coming through, I apologize. Sorry. Phone. Cell phone.
All right. I was just trying to say we can't hear you. Maybe you need to turn up the volume.
But yeah, he was successful in the sense that he moved up in the ranks, actually. So that was good. Unfortunately, he didn't make it. He was killed in Afghanistan, and it was really weird to read what his family was saying about him. Like, they actually wrote, like, I never thought he would make anything of himself, but he totally did, and blah blah blah. And I was like, this is like really weird stuff to write. Like not my cherished loved one. I never thought my son would make anything of himself, but then he did. And I was like, wow.
Oh my God.
Like, that's what you wrote? Like, his dad was like really weird. I don't know. It was just strange. So I think he was driven to prove to his dad, I'm worth something. I'm a real man, And it was sad to see.
Oh,
Yeah.
Jay dropped out.
He might be back. There
Or
he
he might
is.
be. There he is.
He's just
Okay.
resetting.
I've told my sister if she dies before me, her epitaph is going to be nothing is written in stone.
I told you I was sick.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like, you can't really speak, like, like, there's like that kind of like superstition, like, don't say that, you'll speak this into reality. But like, it kind of like felt like a little bit like years later, like, oh, he really did die. But I mean, the chances, of a soldier
Yeah.
not making it strong.
Those are astronomical. Yeah, considering during a time of war what the life expectancy is of a particular combat soldier, it's not that long. I think, what is it? I think it was for 11 Charlie, which was my MLS when I was in the Army, it was like 3.5 seconds or something stupid like that.
Oh my
I
gosh.
think it depends. I think it depends on, I think
Yeah,
he
it
was saying
depends
that,
on
which,
for like 11 Bravo, which is a infantryman, standard rifleman, that was like 2 seconds.
for someone watching the pot kettle on a nuclear cruiser, they're probably not going to be involved in a shooting war.
No,
Sure don't know what you mean.
I'm not talking about anyone in particular there.
But did you hear Drag was a combat medic? Anyway,
That
I
would
knew-
be a short life expectancy.
Yeah.
I knew Drag was a combat medic. So some of the best guys I worked with were combat medics. Those guys were fucking badass. There was one sergeant, on the other hand, who was a complete asshat. God, that guy was a douche canoe. And that guy dug he was setting a fucking IV into my wrist, and man, I swear he was searching for bone, marrow. Man, that hurt.
I
Listen.
can imagine.
Do you want your life saved or not?
Well,
Have
it
you ever-
depends. It depends on how much bleeding I'm doing during a combat lifesaver course.
Have you ever gone through an MRA? Anyone other than Jay who has had a similar experience?
What, MRE?
MRA, magnetic resonance angiogram.
Oh, I was like men's rights activism? What?
That's
Not
what I
that
thought.
MRA.
Yes, he was. Yes. No, angiogram, no. Not an MRA.
They actually, I had to have one where they actually had to pierce through cartilage, and what you were describing sounded like that. It was not pleasant.
He was dragging the needle across my wrist bone every once in a while before he found the right needle. I'm like, dude, really? Bleeding all over the floor. This was for a class, by the way.
I don't think that's how it's supposed to go.
Yeah, I was feeling a little dehydrated, so I was like, oh, they're doing combat lifesaver class. So I went in there and I was like, yeah, we're doing because I knew they were on the IV section because I'd taken the class too. And I was like, yeah. I said, yeah, I need something. They're like, yeah, sit down. I'm like, yeah, good luck finding my veins. And then one of the sergeants who was doing the class said he decided to be all high speed and show the student how to do one in the wrist. And come to find out, he couldn't really do it that well either because, man, that was painful. But I got the liter of saline solution out of it, so that was good.
Well, that's okay. For the thing I had done, the local anesthetic didn't work on me, so it sounds like it was a similar experience.
Yeah, it's kind of is. But either way.
But I wasn't, well, I guess I was there voluntarily, but I was there because I needed to be. You were there because you were thirsty, it sounded like.
Yeah, I actually volunteered for it for shits and giggles. Yeah, I didn't have to be there.
I don't think you
I
got
was-
many giggles out of that unless you enjoy pain.
Sometimes it
Zach,
depends.
I
was laughing.
gotta
I was
go. We'll
laughing
see
when
you
he was
later.
doing it because the guy,
See you later,
the,
Headless.
See you, headless.
the student that was sitting next to him was just absolutely turning green, and I don't have a problem with the sight of blood. So I'm watching the sergeant just dig into my wrist and blood flowing all over the place, and this private's going fucking green.
Nice. Jeez.
Yeah, I'm like that. It's like the time the newbie medic, he was doing a blood draw for our annual checkups and stuff, STD checks and all that stuff. And the way he did it, it allowed me to release my hand. And when he took off the tourniquet, I shot a stream of blood 3 feet through the air.
Oh, that happened to me with an IV. That was pretty exciting.
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
Yeah.
whoa.
Yeah, I knew exactly what was going to happen too, because I followed his. I was like, okay, I'll follow your directions. He goes, okay. And he sticks everything, and he looks and goes, oh shit, I still got the tourniquet on. He goes, oh shit, your hand's still balled up. I'm like, yeah, go ahead and pull the needle out. And he goes,
Did you
okay.
use-
Huh?
When you went into you said the Marines, right?
No, it was Army.
Army. When you went into the Army,
Didn't
did
have
you
to
use like the GI Bill to get an education, maybe?
Yes, to some extent, but I didn't finish using it. I went to school for an associate's degree. I never finished my associate's. I hate college. Fucking
Well,
can't stand it.
I got my associate's degree 2 years ago, but that's a different story. And when I was given the opportunity to get an associate's degree for free, I'm like, I'm taking that deal.
No, I did get offered a full ride, but that was when I was younger. I got offered a free ride to Nyack University for being a homeschooler, and I got offered a free ride to. I actually got two. I got one for that, and then I got one. I got an offer for to go to UNLV for free. But because I was married and living in Michigan, that wasn't going to work so well.
Interesting.
Michigan, the state north of where I am.
So we do have to wrap it up soon because we've been going for a little while. So, like, I guess we'll do a round table of things. Homeschool or private school, would you recommend it if somebody said, I'm thinking of sending my kids to homeschool or private school, or we wouldn't send it? Homeschooling my kids or sending my kids to private school, would you recommend it? Jay, what do you think?
Oh, I would say send your kid to private school. I wouldn't recommend homeschooling. It's a pain in the ass.
Exile, what do you think?
I don't like accelerated Christian education. That's it. I know that there's some homeschools that are some homeschooling, as long as you can socialize your children as part of the education and the curriculum, is good. But if you're not socializing them, I think it's been pretty much shown that if you don't socialize them, then it will fail. But otherwise, it should be no problem. That's my understanding of it. But none of us have talked about that here.
Yeah, I used to think that when I was a kid until I started socializing, and now I work kind of a hermitage job, and due to COVID-19, where everybody's kind of staying away from everybody, I'm really fucking digging it.
Yeah, there's been very little change for me too. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Maybe just a little bit of a misanthrope. I apologize.
Yeah, I'm not a misanthrope.
My wife is going absolutely stir crazy. She's like, it's been over a month since I've talked to anybody but you, had any interaction with any, or more than that. I'm just sitting there going, yeah, you'll be fine. And then she looks at me and she goes, how can you say that? I'm like, I was homeschooled. Don't talk to me about being isolated when I was isolated.
That's one thing, like this whole pandemic thing, like I've been able to deal with the isolation better than other people. Like, people are whining about not being able to go to the bar or whatever. Like, I'm like, I'm fine. Like, I have things to do. So, Sinister Porpoise, you really were like not homeschooled or in private school, right? So.
Well, that doesn't mean.
But what would you say? Like, could you consider it beneficial or not beneficial? Would you recommend?
I think it would depend on the child and the circumstances. I mean, if you're in a place where you have absolutely bad schools and you think you can do a good job of educating the child, why not go for homeschooling if you have the time? But keep in mind that everything comes with its trade-offs.
I think for me, private school, it kind of depends. Like, there's specialized school that isn't necessarily hyper-focused on religion. There's a technical, logical, computer-oriented school here in San Diego that is highly praised amongst other people. There's a school of performing arts here, which is also highly praised for if you have an artsy kid.
If you live in San Diego, not freaking bumfuck Michigan.
Right. But like, so when someone says, I used to have people ask me, should I homeschool my kid? And my reaction would be like, that so depends. Like, so like, how are you, do you feel confident in, every subject that you're going to teach? Do you feel deficient in math? Do you feel like you could actually teach that? Like, I mean, do you have outside resources and help? Are you going through an accredited course, or are you going to do this essentially illegally? Like, there's all sorts of questions. What's that?
My wife is my calculator. Hey, honey, what's 10% of 200?
20.
Yeah, 20.
Yeah, I knew I'd get it. Everybody wants to answer that one. Oh, it's easy.
You just knock off the zeros.
What's 10% of 262?
But I do recommend when the Mormon missionaries come to your door, tell them you like your current choice of underwear and you've already chosen your husband and or wives, depending on your gender, for Kolob.
I would just tell them this. Listen, I need to try on a pair of your underwear just to check out the chafing, because sometimes I get a rash sometimes that forms right there in the ass crack, right in between the sensor spot. I want to just make sure that your underwear offers the amount of breathability that my ass crack deserves in order to keep me from chafing while worshiping His holiness.
You can buy a pair online if you want.
Wow, that sounded worse. Right?
Oh my goodness, so His holiness.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, like if you're gonna tackle it, it really kind of depends on the person, and if it's accredited, and then socialization is a thing. Though I gotta say, as somebody that's not socialized, you can play catch up. Like it took me a while, and I guess I'm still gonna always be weird and different in some ways. But like you can play catch up and catch up to socialization where you can't another thing. So.
Yeah, try socialization in the Army infantry. Wow.
Yeah, well, that's yeah.
At least it wasn't Navy nuke school.
Well, when you first get to your unit and you're walking around and your new squad leader is showing you around the barracks, and you see one of your new squad mates walking through, and your squad leader goes, "Hey, Private Pasek, meet one of your squad mates. PFC so-and-so." And I'm like, "Oh, hey, how's it going, man?" And I reach out to shake his hand, and he grabbed me by the nuts.
Oh my God.
He sexually assaulted you?
Yeah, he grabbed me right by the nuts. So
It is, though, it is. It's supposed to be a gag, but...
Yeah, he grabs me by the nuts and he goes, "Ooh, nice." And then he walked away. And I'm standing there with my hand out, and I look at my squad leader and he goes, "He's not gay. We don't know what the hell he is."
Wow.
It was like an episode of it was like a foul version of Hogan's Heroes.
Bizarre. Yeah, I would say, I wasn't very equipped with dealing with things like that, because I never had to deal with that. So, I don't know if anybody really truly is, but, I think now at least people talk about it, going, you can say, "This is my space, get off me," but, when I was a kid, out deer in the headlights, and I'm sure in the military it's completely different. It's just, shocker.
Try being packed right next to that asshole while you're freaking driving down the road in the back, sharing the back end of a Humvee with him.
Jeez.
Kind of hard to avoid him. You sexually molested me right there in public, right? Yeah, you'll be fine. Are you sure? Dude, if we go to war, me grabbing your nuts is the least of your concerns.
That's bizarre.
Hazing.
Yeah, kind of how we thought so.
Yeah.
I've heard of the whacking the nuts, just not grabbing the nuts. That's kind of
You ever
weird.
heard of teabagging?
Yeah. Yeah, I know what teabagging is.
I've actually witnessed that. That was absolutely not breathtaking.
I feel okay. Let me clarify. When we went to summer camp, we noticed something. We noticed something in summer camp, that the boys would act super wild and do really weird things. So we'd hear these stories of how the guys would all get into the shower together, and they would soap each other up, and then they were playing human bowling.
Yes.
Naked human bowling. And these are homophobic guys, right? These are homophobic Baptist guys, naked human bowling. And then one of them dared the other one to take a dump in the drain, and they're like, "Okay." And
actually,
why?
These guys do stupid things.
Well, they used to have a bust the nut competition, where about a bunch of guys would go in, and they'd all each get into one of the bathroom stalls, and whoever shot the biggest load on the freaking inside of the bathroom stall door won.
This is not normal.
No.
Well, for the infantry.
Being trans, I'm going to assure you, yes, this is normal behavior for guys.
Oh my God.
I just don't understand dudes, I think. So yeah, even
I said, no, if I'm going to do that, I do that in the privacy of the shower. at 3:00 in the morning when everybody else is asleep.
Yeah, yeah. Like we would. So Baptist summer camp is where weird things would happen. Like people would sleep with
Yes.
people,
Yep.
and like they were always like, okay, so they're always the two. We had the two slutty girls, and they both were named Amber.
Oh my god.
And
Oh
they
my God.
one of them
Amber or Tiffany, one of the two.
right, and Amber was extremely limber, and she was in gymnastics, so she'd do her little crazy flips, woo 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 woo,
Keep going.
and
You're
and-
giving me some stuff material.
oh, and she would just be the one, and so like she would run off with the boys, and like they'd go to the cove, and then the next day she'd be with another boy out in the cove, and the cove was like, so like the big lake was where everybody could, they were all monitored,
They were
but
going to the cove. to
the
get in
cove
that
was
cove.
hidden. The cove was hidden. Yes, the cove to go in the cove.
They're going to the hidden cove to get into her hidden cove, which wasn't so hidden for those who had been in that hidden cove. In the
Right.
hidden cove.
Right. So those people were like crazy. So like, you know, when you talk about like the Catholic schoolgirls, like we had like
Yes.
the crazy Baptist girls that weren't really buying the whole religion thing, and they were just kind of like, wee.
Do you think they were doing it anally so that they didn't lose their virginity?
Possibly.
There is a Garfunkel and Oates song about that.
Yep.
So like it's weird because like you would get these people that were like so uptight that they didn't want to talk about sex education, but like we would go to church, and like even at church camp there'd be some people that would be like pretty wild, and then I have to tell this story because it's kind of in conjunction, and you'd hear these stories about the aftermath of these kind of things, and then there was this speaker, and he was like this old guy, right? And he's like, he starts talking about how we shouldn't have sex before marriage, and how we need to all make a commitment to wait. And he keeps saying it fits like a glove. You don't need to test it out. It fits like a glove, gentlemen. And the plumbing works. That was what he was saying. Like there was no practical application of like, if you find yourself in this situation, be safe or anything like that. It was like the plumbing works, don't try it. It's a sin. God will get mad at you, and you're gonna make babies. and he tried to get everybody to make a commitment. So then he's like, everybody close your eyes, and they're like, I want you, if you sinned and you slept with somebody, I want you to know you can become a second virgin, like you can become a born again virgin. Please stand up. And the two Ambers stood up.
Oh my god.
And we're like, oh my god. Of course, we're not supposed to be watching, but everybody's totally like, you know, doing the squinty eye, like who's standing up? Well, of course, it's the two Ambers.
God.
At least the Baptists don't have Boyd K. Packer's pamphlet called To Young Men Only, where he's talking about how the equipment works like a little factory.
Gotta pump out that sperm.
It's an anti-masturbation pamphlet.
Oh, that reminds me of that great video with the Jehovah's Witnesses who are signing, and they're like, don't. I'm just like, oh my god, what am I watching? Oh man, if you don't know what that is, you need to look it up. Just type in Jehovah's Witness sign language masturbation video, and you'll find it. It's well, be careful with where you type that in. Type it in YouTube, not in Google, because I don't know what Google would come up with.
Is the Caleb and Sophia video?
It's like searching for felching. It just depends on where you put it in.
Yeah. It's like my mother looked up on Google Gateway to Joy,
Uh-oh.
and she was looking for a Christian author, but you know, you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
She's on the same internet the rest of us are.
I just heard screaming in the other room, and I ran in. I was like, "Oh my god!"
Did she have safe search on?
I think so, but she still ran into it.
No, she didn't. No, she did not. This is their website to the Gateway of Joy's Joy. What the fuck?
What the hell is this? Anyway, all right. Well, I'm gonna close the stream because we've been going on for a little bit. If you would like to be part of some conversations where we kind of meander through and we kind of have like a main subject that we talk on, but we kind of banter and visit and stuff like that. Nothing too hardcore. Just community, real people having conversations. If you'd like to do that with us, let us know, and we can include you. I'm going to try to do these hangouts more often. They're what I would call semi-open hangs. Like, I don't want to call it an open hang because there is a little tiny bit of vetting. Like, if you're somebody that tends to have a problem behaving like a normal human being, you might not get invited. And there's a few people that are like that, but most people.
Jay, get in here.
Jay's in here, but like if you can't be cordial, then that's kind of the requirement is you got to be somewhat cordial.
If I keep going about how I didn't steal a fit safe, will that get me kicked?
Yeah, so that person's an example of somebody that seems to not be able to be cordial. So
Was I referencing someone? I don't think I was.
but for the most part, most people are okay. So if you're interested in joining these conversations, let me know and I will try to include you. And we hit on different topics. I know a couple of years ago we hit the gun topic and that got a little heated. It was Skylar Fiction and Jim, Slim Jim. Slim Jim is military. Yeah, and
it was funny.
Yeah.
It was a good conversation between him and I.
That got intense. But for the most part, most of the time, we're pretty chill. So, anyway, thanks for joining us. And I guess we're gonna go off air. And that is my husband sneezing. That's not a dog.
COVID. No, I'm just kidding.